Okay.
Will I?
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our horror panel at the Wench Film Festival. We're Ira and Piyushi from the 5 Minute Library, a podcast that helps you find your perfect next book through 5 minute reviews. And we're super excited to have you here. Piyushi, tell us who we're with.
So here we are with Neil De Silva and Kiran MANRAL. Now, Neil De Silva is a very well-known author in the horror genre. He has 12 books to his credit, and he has published himself with leading publishers such as Penguin, Rupa, Hatchet, among a lot of others. And he's even won screen adaptation deals on 4 of his books, and he's writing original series for 3 web series. So I think that's pretty cool, man. That's a incredibly uh, vast horror bio because he's covered fiction, non-fiction, psychological thriller. So we're very excited to have you here, Neil. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eva and Yushi, for having me today. And it will be fun to talk about these works and also listen from Kevin and Alicia what they are up to. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. And now we have Kiran, who is a writer, a social media content creator, and an ex-journalist. She even won an award for International Women's Day for writing by the Indian Council of UN Relations with the Ministry of Women and Children from the Government of India. Welcome, Kiran. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me here. Look forward to this. Thanks, Sapna, for putting this all together. So wonderful, wonderful initiative.
Okay, perfect. So we're waiting on Alicia to join in, and once she joins in, we will also introduce her for our audience, and we'll put forth her questions.
Okay. All right. So I think we should get started. So the name of this panel is I See Dead
Dead.
People. And for a reason, we're here with the who's who of the Indian horror genre scene. And we're going to be talking to them a little bit about what it's like to be horror authors, what inspires them, and what they themselves are most afraid of. So we are going to start off with Kiran. Our first question is for you. So you write a lot of fiction and horror, and you write about your characters with a lot of depth and complexity, which makes them very multidimensional, and people would want to know more about them. So where do you draw your inspiration for these characters from real life?
So that's a very interesting question. I think, like all authors, one does draw inspiration from real life. We have people all around us with a multitude of complexities. For instance, Julia McNally from The Face at the Window, she's the protagonist. She's a 78-year-old retired Anglo Indian school teacher. Came, I think, from a lot of my mother's stories from the time she was teaching in a boarding school in Missouri, where she would talk about these Anglo Indian ladies who were teachers and who had remained unmarried and would probably stay back in the towns after they retired from teaching, take a little cottage and sort of live out their days there. So I think that's from where I got Julia McNally. For More Things in Heaven and Earth, Kamala Malik, my protagonist, is a 30 something widow. So I think someone who had just lost her husband when she was very young sort of fitted into this, and the moving on and this letting go and the holding on, the duality of her emotions is what I try to bring in this book. So real life is a pool of inspiration.
And what about all of the instances of like what the apparitions around you do and the actual horror, scary stuff? How do you make that up?
How do I make that up? I don't. I have a very weird process of writing, and but I admire Neil because he's very organized and very disciplined, and he plans out stuff. But my process is very weird. The character writes the story, so to speak. So there's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of deletion, and there are a lot of detours and tracks that I could never have really planned. But it arises organically as you write, as you get into that groove. The scenes and what would happen just flow. It isn't something that you plan or say that, okay, I think now I should put a jump scene here, I should put a scare scene here, I should do this here. This is the point where an apparition should have come. If it doesn't come organically while I'm writing it, it doesn't fit into the flow of the book for me. And that's how I work. And it's not a very time friendly process. I take yours on these books.
I think it's incredible how we take so many different instances from real life and use it to fuel our imagination to then create a whole new world, whether it's horror in this case or whether it's sci-fi or fantasy. I think the way that real life acts as a mirror for fantasy and fiction is incredible. And I love that you both of you have experimented so much with drawing inspiration, which brings me to my next question, which is for Neil. Neil, so you've, like I said, you have experimented with fiction, non-fiction, psychological thriller, and you've gone to quite an extent in a number of books. Things that sometimes would make people go like, "Whoa, this is something I've never read before, something they couldn't have even possibly dreamt of." So, my question to you is out of all the books that you've written, tell us a little bit about the genres you've explored and what is the craziest story that you've written about or the craziest book you've written about?
The craziest one would be definitely my debut, because that's always the way it works. That was Maya's New Husband 7 years ago when I decided that I would write down a novel. The story that hit me, it just hit me from somewhere. I didn't know that it was coming, and it came with such force, such impact that I just had to get it out of my system. That's how Maya's New Husband happened, and it's a simple tale basically, a story of a woman trapped in a marriage where she doesn't know that the husband is a kind of aguri. He's a serial killer, and he's a different kind of a guru, but he is a disillusioned guru. He's basically a person who is quite a criminal, quite a psychopath. In the daytime, he's like any of us, ordinary. He's also a teacher, but in the night time, that is where he really lets go. And my other woman who is trapped in the marriage, she doesn't realize this, but when she does, it's something that she has to fight against, and that part I really enjoyed, making Maya fight for a fight out of this struggle that she was in. That book was pure unadulterated horror, because at that point when I was writing that book, I had a readership of one, and that was my wife. And I was writing, and I knew that I had the liberty to scare her as much as I wanted. I did not know that the book would ever be published, whether anybody would even read it, because I was this person who did not know anything about the publishing industry, how it works. So I just gave it my all. I had grown up with my subtitling movies with my dad. I used to assist him when he would do that. Our biggest clients at that time were the Ramsays. So a lot of horror stuff that came in the house was subtitled right at the table where my dad used to sit on his Remington typewriter, and I, as a 13-year-old, 12-year-old kid, would sit next to him and watch him do that. And that's how the horror thing was ingrained in me right from the start.
Right.
There were also these Doordarshan series at that time.
Yeah.
There was a serial named Agori, which was quite scary. And I watched it, I think I was in the ninth grade at that time, but it stayed with me for years. And I just had to, somehow I put in everything together. All this thing that, all the dark stuff that was in my mind, including post Gothic stuff, which I grew up on. And that's how somewhere I distilled it, and the novel That's Maya's New Husband happened. I'm happy it happened that way. It's quite extreme. There's a lot of cannibalism in it, and a lot of philosophy as well, because it is
Right.
like
Yeah.
my view of what the agora is like. And Bhaskar, the protagonist or the antagonist, the way you see it, is a disillusioned chap. So he does not know what he is doing himself. But then he rationalizes stuff to himself. And that
Oh,
was where even I was rationalizing stuff to myself as to whether my imagined reader would take this in
Hi.
right.
a particular way or not. So that was it. Yeah, that's it. Since then, I've written a lot of stuff. I've written psychological thrillers. There's one coming out this year. I've written supernatural horror with Yakshini. I have written non-fiction, which I think we'll talk about in some time, because that's completely a different direction. Non-fiction I wrote with Sarbajit Mohanty and Jay Alani, where I actually learned what the paranormal was, because so far we had just heard this term paranormal. And when I started writing 7 years back in 2015, when I started writing, I wrote horror as a kind of entertainment. just to thrill people. But somewhere along the line, I met these paranormal investigators who, in fact, took this as a profession more than a vocation, a career for them. And what was it that they saw in it that they gave up their, they are giving their lives to it. So, how did that work for them? Understanding their ideologies and then documenting them in a book was an interesting premise for me as well. So, that is how my nonfiction stuff happened. Yeah.
Okay, Ira's gonna be back in a while because she just her allergy just hit.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
perfect.
horror panel, so things are going to
Yeah,
happen.
things
I
will
think it's
happen.
I think it's incredible how we have so many coincidences for everyone watching. We had a dry panel run yesterday, during which our lights went off twice, and Neil and Alicia both said this is definitely a sign because things have happened. The same thing has happened with them before, and right before we got on the call, even Sapna said that during the screening for a horror movie, the same thing happened to her in an entire hall. So I think it's pretty cool how just random things have been
But
happening while
somehow I am immune to all this stuff. So whatever will happen to you or Kiran, beware, but I'll be safe.
Nothing to me.
I think it's cool.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. So on that note, Kiran, I have a question for you. When it comes to inspiration for work, uh, how far would you go to get inspired for horror?
You don't need to go very far, to be honest, because it's all around you.
And so, yes.
Yeah, it's if you have a certain sensitivity and if you are attuned to certain energies, you will feel and you will see and you will understand things all around. You don't really have to go hunting too much. People might probably just think, put me in a straitjacket and take me off to the nearest institution if I talk too much. But all I can say is that there is stuff that we don't understand, and Neil has gone in depth and he has researched it. I have not gone in depth and researched it, but I have had enough experiences in my life to convince me that there is a lot of stuff that we don't really understand nor can we give explanations for. So you don't
Yeah.
need to go anywhere.
Okay, perfect. I think that's something that I would agree with because there's so much from real life that we can take. But do you think you would go to an extreme to get inspired for your book?
Neil, maybe you could, if you want to take that up, you
You
can
want to
too.
take that?
Yeah. Kiran was saying something. Were you saying something?
I was just saying that I've never felt the need to go and find inspiration.
Right.
It comes to you. And if, as a writer, as a creative person, you can't find inspiration in your day to day life or in your experiences or in your lived experience, then you're not a you're a poor creative person if you seek inspiration. So that's just my take on it. But having said that, yes, I have been to certain places. For instance, going to a place like Mukteshwar, going to the cemeteries there, just wandering around out of a sense of morbid curiosity and reading the gravestones, or going to Ross Island, which is, I think, the spookiest place I visited. And my son actually physically had to drag me out because I was rooted in that spot. And it was the worst time to go there because we landed there at around dusk. So it was like really eerie
Yeah.
and the energies were really quite terrifying. So inadvertently, I have been to places that give you those the kind of moments that you're seeking, but I've never actively sought them out. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So for me, how it is, it really depends on the project that I'm working on. Like both my books, which are, I would say, the best known of my works, Maya's New Husband, as well as Yakshini, both of them happened in this very room, in fact, on this very desk where I'm sitting right now. Even Haunted and Spirits talk to me. So I'm a very home person. I like to just sit at in this one particular spot because that is where my creative juices flow, kind of an eccentricity, idiosyncrasy, I don't know what you would term it as. But then there were times when, because we live in Mumbai, and Mumbai is such a busy place, and there were things happening all the time, there were so many distractions. And there were certain times when you have to work on a deadline. Like when, especially like when I'm writing a web series, or when I'm writing three right now, and these things are on a very very strict deadline, and then there's so much at stake. So when that happens, I tend to move out. So I go out of the city. I go wherever I can. I travel. I go to an unfamiliar place. I try to look for a place that has a reputation of being haunted. I don't know about what it is. I lock myself in a hotel room, and that is where I write. So that is how a few of my upcoming projects have happened. I was in Goa a couple of years
Oh,
back, so I keep going to Goa. That's a
yeah.
pilgrimage kind of thing. But I went there for writing once, for on a writing trip, and I just locked myself in a hotel room. And the place, it's Kalangut. It's Kalangut, so it's quite a busy place. It's not, but there is this Portuguese mansion right across, and that was like quite old. I don't know, some centuries old. So I booked a hotel right opposite it, across it, so that I could see that mansion. And it is an abandoned mansion now. Nobody's allowed to go in and stuff.
That's cool.
And I wrote my novel almost, viewing that thing from the window, which was supposed to be a haunted place. And I'll tell you the energy that flowed in me at that point when, because I was writing such dark stuff, and I was alone. I was cut off for 10 days. I did not speak to anybody else, and I was in that place, in that ambience. I think it brings out something. And the story that came out became so dark that when I brought it back and I showed it to my editors, there were several pointers, here just tone it down a little, tone it down a little.
Oh, yeah.
Because that, yeah, so such things I do. I go out with my paranormal investigator friends whenever I can, and then they take me places, they show me stuff. I tried a Ouija board once with them, so
Ooh,
just to
yeah.
see whether spirits come, and that was a fun day. So nothing came, but the whole vibe that it creates, it makes you wonder. And at that point of time, it doesn't matter how much of a skeptic you are, but when
Hmm.
you are there in that room, and we were in Bandra at that time, this was a very old Bandra house. Where the lights was also those incandescent ones. We didn't have the fluorescent ones that we have now, LEDs and stuff. Old lights, old furniture, very vintage. And there was this Ouija board on the desk, and just five, six of us were hunched around it and see what's happening, what's happening. Is that thing going to move? And just the hushed whispers, it does something to you. So I enjoy this kind of thrill, and somehow it then reflects in my writing. I use those things. So
Yeah.
when I'm going through it, I know that I'm going to use it somewhere in my works.
So, it's like you said, it's all about the right vibe and creating your vibe. And to add to our spooky vibe today, we have ALISHA KRIPALANI with us. Hi, we're so happy to have you here. I'll do a quick introduction. From full-length novels to blogging and microfiction, ALISHA KRIPALANI is known for her impeccable language and insightful nature of her writing. She was also elected as a top writer in feminism for her blog on Medium. She too has been published in HarperCollins, and we are so happy to have you, Alicia.
Hi everyone. I'm sorry. The spirits were chasing me, so I'm a little late. Technology spirits, I'd put it that way. Sorry about the delay.
No problem. I think let's jump right into it. Alicia, there's a question that we've been waiting to ask you. We wanted to ask you, we've been talking a lot about what inspires horror writing and where we draw inspiration from. But I specifically want to know from you how you got into writing the horror genre. And was there any paranormal activity or incident in your life that moved you?
Uh, okay, so basically, a quick introduction is I belong. My nana was F.U. Ramsey. That is the horror, as definitive as horror can be for India. So I grew up on a diet of horror movies, but and my mom and I used to like binge watch them. So I think while I have a husband who used to get scared of Shetty and Pran, I was busy watching all those Daravna films and acting like it's just part of life. I don't think horror was something I actually was drawn towards. It was more psychological horror. I think the human brain and the kind of terror that hides or resides in it has been far more fascinating for me. When I hear people speak about their horrific moments, I can feel that fear. All right, because a lot of horror is on film, particularly, is where most of us have access to it or used to. Was sound effects, was it wasn't the word, only a spoken word or a written word. You needed a lot more elements to that, but someone's scary story, somebody's scary mind was a lot more inspiring. To cut a long story short, I essentially used to hear my mom say she had seen spirits. Actually, it was very nonchalant and matter of fact, and I was like, okay, kind of. And then my younger daughter started telling me from age around 8, 9. Even then I did okay, okay. I had a few odd events here and there, but I didn't really focus till I actually encountered a real spirit uh, in Spain in 2012, and I actually managed to capture it on a video camera. And that was a turning point. After that, we were chased with, I cannot tell you, issues galore. All that is in my book. Actually, the book I wrote, A Ghost in Our Backyard, though it's the story of the Ramsays, it started a quest for me where I'm like, this is not possible that, my mom, my daughter, and I have seen this now. And there have been events that I've been ignoring. What about the family members? Let me ask them, because nobody ever sat down to actually ask, like, Mama, have you ever seen a spirit or whatever? Most of them were alive at that point in time. Out of seven, only one's alive today. So I managed to encapsulate, and not everybody had seen it. Not everybody saw them constantly. I would say my mom, the women, that is my Masi and my mom, seem to have more encounters. I don't know whether it's a more woman thing, that maybe we are more attuned. I'm not sure. But my mama did have a one-off. Another mama had a one-off, but I think they were awkward about expressing this publicly because it's their business. So it was like probably washing your dirty linen in public. So they also shoved it under the carpet. And this book kept growing. And think uh, I think it differs from, I've had a look at both Neil's and Kiran's writing. I think it's different in a sense. It brings in, for me, horror uh, is not horror in itself. It's for me to pull you in and say, see what this person is thinking. So whether I take you to a terrorist's mind who is, say, luring young boys, that is horrifying for me. When I'm looking at this war and I see, people bombing people, that is horrifying for me, because it's like, how can you do this? So I don't know what the definition of horror per se is, but this turned out to be a horror as an out and out horror, in terms of getting those anecdotes, which will be impossible to ever get again, since unfortunately everyone's passed away. My own journey. So I would say it's a journey of spirits and spirituality. So that, to cut it short, really
Nice,
short, my citing a spirit led me to this point of writing this book.
Nice.
nice. I
So,
really like that.
yeah, I think it's a very, like it also ties into what we were just talking about.
Yeah,
How do you get inspired? So, while
yeah.
Neil probably locks himself up in a room across a haunted Portuguese mansion, and Kiran says inspiration comes to her, for you, it's drawing on like past experiences and like real life
Everything in
moments.
your family, in the history.
Yeah.
And what I like about all the different variety that we have here is that from all the different sources of inspiration that all three of you have, it all ties in with the theme of true horror lies in the cages of our own minds.
Of
And
course.
I think that's incredible, because even though all of you have different sources of inspiration, whether it's family history or imagination or real life experiences, it's still just the same thing at the base.
Yeah, and like now how Alicia said that she has had some paranormal experiences. I'd like to know, Neil, Kiran, have you had any brushes with such experiences, or have you tried calling upon the dead?
Spirits. I know
Yeah.
Neil has done the board, which
Yeah.
so have I, which was also very spooky. I would never do it again.
We
But
did tried it in school, Neil. Sorry, may I interrupt? In school, in a convent school, that too, we decided, and we sat together and decided, who should we call. We decided to call Gandhiji, because we said he was a good man. I also remember this so clearly, that we all had
So
a huge
cute.
discussion. All these schoolgirls sitting there and saying, and before we could even begin, came the nun. and we got like properly. And you have no idea how we tried so hard to find someone who wouldn't possess us. So failed attempt and suspension. So trust me, Ouija board never again.
That is truly terrifying.
That definitely is. Kiran, have you ever tried to call upon a spirit?
No, I don't think I've called upon a spirits, but maybe the spirits have been calling upon me because I've had some weird experiences off and on and totally freaked out my husband
Tell
and my
us.
son and
Tell us the
both
scariest
that.
one that you experienced.
Hmm, scariest one. Um, okay, so this happened after my husband and I had a really, really bad accident. It was a really, I mean, like we were literally taken, cut out of the car. The car was like totally wrecked and it was a bad scene. And I was injured. I had some surgery. He was injured. So we were at home and, like out of it for a few days. And every night I would wake up and see something really dark standing at the foot of my bed. And being the scary puss that I was, I would close my eyes and go back right to sleep. And after a few days, I told my husband, you know what, Kirit, I think I see there's something at the bed and I'm not very comfortable. And he tells me, I've been seeing the same thing.
Wow.
And after we spoke to each other about it, that never, like we stayed awake the whole night to see what it could be. It didn't come again, whatever it was. So that was something in my home, in my room, in my bedroom that happened. And since it happened with both of us without us knowing it, that's something that was really very scary. And the other on and off odd things to hote hi rehta hai na, hotel room, dark night, deserted road. So that though is normal. That's
Day to
par for the
day.
course. Yeah, that's par for the course.
All in a day's work.
Yeah, yeah. That
Neil,
that
you're
was
on mute. Sorry, Neil.
Neil, you're on mute,
So,
Neil.
I'll tell you mine now because when Kevin said this, it reminded me of an incident that happened. This was 2010, and I was not an author at that time. I did not even have it anywhere on the horizon of my mind that okay, I'll write someday. I never had that. My dad, he fell sick around 2 years before that, 2008, and he would not go out of the house much after that because he could not, and he would be mostly on a bed. Now, these 2 years were very difficult. 2008, 2009, and 2010. 2010 was when he passed. In fact, it is 1st Jan 2011 when he passed. So, what happened in the interim? My last meeting with dad was somewhere around Christmas. He passed on New Year's, somewhere around Christmas. And dad just, he was in a very delirious state at that time. He would just speak very incoherently. And he just sat up. He saw me, he sat up, and out of the blue, it was nowhere. And just like that, the words came out of his mouth that, I have done lots of things in life. There's one thing that I could not do, and I want to do it. Then I asked him what it is. First, I was surprised, but I held that in check and I asked him what he wants to do. And he said, I want to write a book. I
Oh,
want to write
lovely.
a book. I want to write a story. And I have the story in mind. I mean, lying on this bed, I have thought of a story. And he went on to tell me the story. The story
Okay.
was a basic cat and mouse and dog kind of story. It's a very basic story. But of course, I heard it out, and I was very emotional at that point because he had never spoken that much at length with me for a while, and he was telling me that. And then he just slept. That one day I'll write it, and he slept. Days passed, and then now this is really the scary part. So this was on the New Year's morning. He passed in the afternoon. New Year's morning, I was not in the house. We had a different house at that time. So my mother told me later that since morning your dad was just sitting up on bed and he was shivering and he was just saying that I can see people around me, a lot of people, and they are dark, they are shadows, and they are crawling on the floor and coming to me like slithering snakes. So they are coming up to me. I don't know who they are. They are calling me and don't let me go with them. So that was what he said. And of course, we called the doctors and all. Everything was going on. But this was what he said. And at 3. That same afternoon, mom's call came and she said, "Come immediately. Your dad has gone crazy." We went and he had passed. So he saw the Grim Reaper, or maybe whatever we call it. We have different names for that. But he saw it coming, and that really shook me. Also, this was 2011. 2015, somehow things transpired that I wrote a book and I became an author. And even at that point, it didn't strike me. But 2 years later, 2019, 4 years later, when I got published with Penguin, and Penguin called me to Delhi for a launch, and I was in the car for the first time. This happened with me. That as soon as I got out of the airport, there was this chauffeured car waiting for me, and there was that guy holding Penguin Random House and me, etc. And I was alone, and it was my birthday. It was 31st October, Halloween, and I was just alone because yeah, my family had to be back here in Mumbai. So I went alone for that, and I saw the shopper standing there with my name and on my birthday. And he just took me to the car, and I was speechless. I could not talk. He took me in that car. I sat. He knew the address. He knew everything. And there in the car, sitting on the back seat, I was not talking to him because I remembered what dad said at that time, that I want to become an author. And then it connected. Oh, I have become an author. Somewhere he has made things happen. And then the tears came. They did not come on the day he died. They did not come at the, because I don't cry that much, but that day in the back seat of their car, and I have told this to no one. This is the first time I'm sharing it. Even Anita, my wife, doesn't know this. This is the first time I'm telling this, and since that day, I miss him a lot. Like, he's the one who made it happen. And there, I have started believing in the afterlife, that something does happen beyond.
Wow, Neil, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
That's a very touching story.
Yeah, like I
So
feel
I'm
now it's so
shocked.
evident as to how well you can weave the story for us, because I was going from emotional to scared
I
to
felt
spooked.
so much too. I
Yeah.
was so a whole range of
This is how
emotions.
it happened. This is how it happened. Real life is what has everything in it, all the masala. We just
It's
need
awesome.
to see it in
Yeah.
that perspective, like what's where, put it together. That's it. Stories come from real life, as Kevin said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you,
agree with
Neil.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I feel,
Also,
yeah.
sorry. May I?
Yes,
Neil,
yes,
I also
yes.
believe in what you said. I don't know about Kiran on this one about things being preordained. Like he said, he was on 31st. I would have should have been a natural turning to horror. Uh, but I was born outside a crematorium. Something that I just said, so I was born in a car outside a crematorium. I am now in my 50s. And when I'm writing this book, I'm saying, okay, this is really weird. Why have I never thought that I was actually born into this, for this? So when you're talking about a calling, uh, I would say that there is a pulling, and trust me, it is not a genre, neither non-fiction nor, like I said, out and out horror that I was going to go for. So I think that there is an element of uh, destiny which is going to pull you towards that direction, and the doors have to remain open. You've got to be flexible here and flow with it. So we don't know
Yeah.
what lies ahead.
Agree.
Agree.
Agreed.
I
Yeah.
think that's
Destiny does play a huge role, whether it was Kiran's accident, the story that Neil told us, or Alicia being born right outside a crematorium. So I think it's maybe our destiny is pre-written, or maybe we do have a hand to play in it. But I guess we'll never know.
But speaking about going with the flow, I think we're going to go in the flow right now because we're getting into our little rapid fire round. The rules of
Oh,
which are very simple. We're all going to ask you the same question one by one. The order of asking will be Kiran, Neil, and Alicia. So, Alicia, you get a little bit of time to think about your answer.
And I
And
get
you,
thrown under the bus.
yes,
Yes.
and you answer in one word or the first word or first phrase that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Okay. Perfect. So
Okay, your first question, Kiran. What is the one thing that scares you the most?
Lizards.
Neil, what's the one thing that scares you?
dentists. It's right now. It's going on right.
You get that?
Alicia?
Yes.
Cockroaches and maggots.
Oh,
Ah,
yeah.
so
Ew.
very non-spooky stuff scares us. Very physical, corporeal things scare
Yeah.
us.
You know what scares you the most?
Insects, all sorts of insects, and 10 missed calls from my mom. That's the worst.
That is the
Guys,
most
you know my
scary thing
answer
of
to
all.
deadline.
Oh
Guys,
my god, definitely. That the last one.
What about you?
Sunlight. I
Yeah.
don't do well in sunlight.
Yeah, right.
Oops.
oh,
Oops, we
you
lost
heard.
them.
Hmm. I think
Shakriya,
we
so
got scared.
Interesting.
Huh?
Yeah,
I
so
think they
you,
got scared.
but Alicia, I just want to say something about you being preordained. So there's
Yeah.
this thing about being born with a call.
Yeah.
So I believe that was something that my mother doesn't put much store to, but my grandmother once told me that that was the way I was born.
That's what I'm
So
saying. Can you see all three of us are actually, it's interesting because we're in three different places,
Yeah.
but we were supposed to be these storytellers that we are in terms of this realm. See, that's a threesome which are born
with
strangely.
something, with some
Hmm?
strange things on
Yeah, yeah,
during
yeah.
their birth.
Yeah.
Go right ahead with your rapid fire.
Yeah. Speaking about being born into things, I think let's talk about dying and death. So, what I want to know from each of you, starting with Kiran, is what is the best way to die, according to you?
Best way in your sleep, I think. In your sleep, having a nice dream. That would be a nice, peaceful way to go. But don't knowing me, I would go screaming and kicking and whatever, whatever.
Neil, what about you?
In your sleep. Yeah, in my sleep. I would like to go that way, like my dad did. But he had a horrific incident before that. I mean, thoughts, not the incident itself. But yeah, when he passed, it was he was sleeping, so he did not uh, have the struggle, the physical struggle of dying. He just, apart from if we discount the fact that for 2 years he was on bed anyway. But I think he had just let go at that point. Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's death is very frustrating to talk about. I let me restrict it to my books.
Okay. Okay. All right. Alicia, what about you?
Instant, painless, and please not cancer. I've seen it too close up with people. The disease petrifies me. I'll tell you something funny while we're talking of this. I keep telling my husband if like I pop it now, make sure if my tongue is sticking out like this, make sure it's in and then call everybody in. I don't know why I have this fear that my tongue will be sticking out. I look most disgraceful. So that's what living with a writer does.
These are the horror bad jokes that we were talking about.
As promised, deliver
Yeah.
on time.
Yeah, I think we'd all say instant. I think all of us just wanted peaceful, instant, and painless. Maybe how we kill ourselves would be a better question if we had to. I don't know what to say.
I guess, I mean, I think that the peaceful way is the best way, but do we agree? Do we agree?
Maybe our opinion would differ because we're young, excited,
I think I would like to be taken out maybe with a sword, just go out in a really nice way.
But sometimes I wonder whether there is really a peaceful way to die. Even if you die in the sleep, uh, we haven't seen anyone dying in their sleep. What is the moment just before passing like? Whether it is in sleep, whether it's when you're conscious. What is that split second where you see that your death has come to you? What is that moment like? That terrifies me. That
So there's been a lot of research, Neil, no, on people who've had
yes,
near-death experiences and
near
their
death. I've written
transition.
about it.
The
Yeah,
white
Yeah,
light, the
yeah,
thing.
I've written
yeah.
about
Which is
it.
why I
So
took
I
instant and painless. I don't want to think for a second. Also, oh, gone. So
Finished.
yeah,
Done with it.
Gone.
but I'm
death
like peaceful is
should
not
come
painless.
when you are ready to go. I think that would be the best way to die. When you are ready to go, when you feel like you have
Right.
accomplished everything, when like maybe Bhishma Pitama in Mahabharata, that's
Oh, yeah.
the point where you
He's
say that
fast.
it's done, my job is done. Then it doesn't matter how it comes, but I think I believe in karma. So once that is resolved and you are ready to move on and you to move on, that I think would be a good way to die. Sorry, this was rapid fire.
Okay.
Okay, the next one will be rapid.
For sure. So, if you could call back any dead person, whether it's famous or
a famous dead person.
actually, yeah, famous. Let's go for the famous one.
Famous. Yes.
A famous one that
Okay.
you call back and just have sit and have dinner with them.
Who
Who
would
would it
be?
be? Kiran, let's start with you.
Who would it be? I think George Orwell,
Oh
Oh
yeah, that's
yeah,
a very good one.
lovely.
Oh, that
because
would
what
be a
a
very
lot
interesting.
of what I'm reading and I've been rereading his stuff, and I'm like, how did you know this is going to happen to the world? So,
Yeah,
1984.
yeah.
Oh, definitely. Neil, what about you?
I would have loved to say Edgar Allan Poe, but I'll keep it to Agatha Christie because she was such a method writer and so fast she churned out a novel. I would like to just know her method and how she wrote all those books. Such engaging stuff, which it defies age. You can read it at any age and still enjoy her stuff. Just want to pick a brains probably. Yeah, Agatha Christie too.
Yeah.
Alicia.
Alicia?
I'll go with Lord Byron,
Ah,
handsome as hell,
okay.
uh,
Absolutely, man.
and writes passionately, and good eye candy as well as brain candy.
Of course.
Optimum
We like that
intuition.
type. We support that type. I who would you?
Oh, don't ask me. I haven't thought about this.
I think I would like to call upon the Bronte sisters. I can't pick one, but just the amount of passion and the amount of vulnerability in their books, I would definitely like to have dinner with them. Okay, perfect. So that completes the.
We have one
We have
last
one last
bonus
question. Oh
question.
yeah, we do.
Yes,
We
and
do.
we have
Oh,
5 minutes left for our panel. So let's have our last question. Um, and probably there are experiences associated with this. Feel free to share. But Kiran, if you got the chance to go along on a supernatural investigation, would you?
yes, why not? It will be great fun. Neil has already been there, so this question doesn't apply to you, Neil. But
And
yeah, why not? Yeah.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't want to delve over there at all because I've seen the impact on our personal life and everything. Okay, I mean, I think, and I really wish well to everybody else, and Neil everything. But we all have families, and it's if
Yeah,
any of
true.
these spirits attach themselves to you,
Themselves to you.
yeah, I
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
more than
Correct.
myself, it can really really take you for a ride. So to
That
me,
is the
absolutely not. So I'll just intervene on one thing to tell you that when I wrote Ghosts in Our Backyard, and whether it was my literary agent, which is Red Ink, or it was Harper and my editor Bushra, I said the same thing to both. Whatever editorial changes you make, I have no problem. But I am vehement that we do not change what people saw, for marketability, because I am going to give full respect to those who have passed away and those who've experienced what they did, and to that experience, not to change it. I may create mood, I may create ambience, I may create style, technique, but the actual event will not be tampered with. And that to me was like, I would not even tamper with it in my work because I just don't want to toy around with this in any way. It's not worth the price. Like I said, I've seen what one can go through. So
Yeah, yeah.
That's for sure. You need
That's
to,
a
if
sobering
you want
note.
to
Yeah.
go
yeah,
on such a journey or such an investigation, you have to do with people who know. Because there are some of us who
Professionals.
are very attuned to such stuff, some who are not. But you don't know when something might affect
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
drastically. You don't know that. Yeah, I agree with that.
Any children, na? See, like my younger daughter really got hit after I saw that spirit, and having been through a really harrowing journey with her health and all, I know more than ourselves, our children, our loved ones, they matter. So, okay, so to cut it short, I'd never tamper with it. I'd never go out and reach out
Right.
to the dead.
And they're like, like they're like chewing gum. If they get stuck to you, it's damn difficult to dislodge them. So
Also,
yeah.
Kiran, I have a couple of friends who've lost their mothers lately, and they obviously it's a lot of grief, and they've been trying to come, to terms with the passing, and they've been looking at mediums, and they've been looking at that. I said, you're disturbing someone a loved one who may be at peace, don't do that. If they wanted to give you a sign, they would.
They would.
I said,
Can
Which
render.
I have used.
yeah, I mean, these are very close friends. I said it's an act of selfishness on your part to bring even your worldly miseries. I don't know any better, but it's just a philosophy that I hold, that you're taking your worldly miseries while she may have found her peace, your mother, finally. Because even there, then you're waking her up, you know?
Right.
And so
Yes.
my mom is quite amazing on this one because she sees them regularly. She talks to them. You know, she'll say, "Arey, why you're troubling? I'm feeling sleepy now. I'm not troubled you. Please let me sleep." It's like, I see her to say, and she actually speaks, very calmly because to her they are disturbed people who deserve our
And
compassion
listen.
and our empathy rather than the exploitation. If you understand, where one is like waking them up, even with your own parent, it's not fair. So that's okay. That's just my take.
No, I see where you're coming from, Isha. That does make sense. I've always wanted to take part in a seance at some point, but maybe not. Maybe I'll do it for the experience. Maybe not. Who
Now
knows?
I'm scared to do it after what Alicia has just told us. It must be quite
No, I
Yeah,
terrifying.
would
that
like
really.
to do it because, just for the experience of it. Because I feel that if we are going to write about this stuff, if we are going to explore this stuff, then there is so much unknown out there. I,
Yeah,
my quest is only to know it a little better.
yeah.
That's what it's all about. I do not go tinkering with stuff. I do not go pottering around. But
I
just
agree.
to get that
No, his
experience,
risk is worth it. His risk is worth it
you
because,
need
yeah,
to. I think where I am in the kind of stories I write,
yeah.
I need to put my neck out a little. That's what I do.
I agree. I agree.
For
It's
fun
important
element,
participation.
Not
come
just
here.
fun.
All three of us will come
But
tonight, Riyal.
very scary when it goes bad.
On
I know.
that
I'm
very
Whatever the
spooky
chaos is.
note and spooky thought. Yes,
Yes.
I think it is time, unfortunately, for us to conclude this panel discussion. But I think we were just getting juicy
Yes.
and fun. But I had a great time.
And I love that we've been able to explore so many different ideas and subgenres within horror, from just coming up with it, again drawing inspiration from all our different sources, writing about it, and then what to do after that to fuel our creativity even more. I think it's been such a great conversation, and it's been so lovely to have everyone here. I've loved horror ever since I was a child and watched Casper for the first time on TV, which I believe is every millennial and Gen Z ever. So I'm so glad that we were able to do this and we were able to have all of you incredible writers on this panel. And huge shout out to Sapna for putting all of this together, and
Absolutely.
Wench Festival,
Yeah.
who they've been doing such an incredible job. And I can't wait to see where this goes further. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Kiran. And thank you, Alicia. And thank you to our
Thank you
lovely
so
audience.
much. And
Thank you for
thank you,
having
Neil
me.
and Kiran. It was really lovely sharing the panel with you. And you all were amazing. Both of you all absolute pros. Yeah.
Right back,
Thank you.
Alicia. Right back. Thanks, Piyushi.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ira.
Thanks.
Thanks,
And
Neil.
thank you, Sapna, and
Thank you,
everyone
sir.
in Wench for having us here. Yep. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bye.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you,
Perfect. Thank
everyone.
you.